The morning rush at the small roadside diner was always a whirlwind of noise, movement, and chatter, but for Emily, it was just another day in the endless rhythm of her life. The scent of sizzling bacon, freshly brewed coffee, and the faint hint of grease filled the air as she darted between tables, her faded apron swinging with every step. Her hair, neatly tied back into a low ponytail, had escaped a few strands that brushed her tired but kind face. To the regular customers, she was simply Emily the waitress, the woman who never complained, who remembered everyone's orders by heart, and who always had a smile no matter how rough the day got. But behind that gentle smile lived a quiet exhaustion and a secret no one in the diner could have guessed. The door chimed as a group of sharply dressed men walked in, laughing and talking loudly. Their polished shoes clicked against the tiled floor, and their watches gleamed under the warm morning light. They were from the luxury car dealership just a few blocks away, the kind of place where only the wealthy went to buy cars that cost more than most people's homes. Emily greeted them with her usual politeness, offering menus and pouring water with the grace she'd perfected over the years. But from the moment they sat down, their arrogance filled the room. They looked around at the worn-out decor and the blue-collar crowd with thinly veiled amusement, whispering to each other and chuckling. When Emily asked if they were ready to order, one of them smirked and said, "We'll need a few minutes, sweetheart. This isn't the kind of place we usually eat at. We're just slumming it today." The others laughed, and though she kept her face composed, Emily's heart sank a little. Still, she kept her tone soft and professional. She had long learned that people like that thrived on reactions. As she turned to walk away, another man called out, "Hey, miss, what do you drive? Bet it's not one of ours." His tone was teasing, but it carried a cruel edge. Emily smiled faintly and said, "Not yet. I'm saving up for something reliable, that was all it took." The men burst into laughter. "Reliable?" One scoffed. "Maybe start with a bicycle first," another added, leaning back with a grin. The loudest of the group, the dealership manager himself, laughed so hard he nearly spilled his coffee. "A waitress buying a car from my dealership?" he said mockingly. "That'll be the day. You probably couldn't even afford a test drive." The other customers turned their heads, the laughter echoing painfully in the quiet diner. Emily's throat tightened, but she didn't let it show. She simply nodded, turned around, and walked back to the counter. Her manager, overhearing part of the exchange, shot her a warning glare as if reminding her to stay quiet and keep working. That was the rule: never talk back, never cause trouble, no matter how wrong someone was. Emily took a deep breath, steadying herself as she continued to serve other customers. She brought the laughing men their food, refilled their coffee, and endured every mocking glance with silent dignity. Deep down, though, something inside her burned, not anger, but a reminder of why she'd chosen this life in the first place. When her shift finally ended, Emily walked home along the cracked sidewalks, the evening sun painting the sky in fading shades of gold. Her apartment was small but tidy, filled with simple comforts: a bookshelf stacked with business journals, a single framed photo of her parents, and a laptop sitting on the kitchen table. Most people who saw her at the diner assumed she was struggling to get by, but what they didn't know was that Emily wasn't who she seemed. Years ago, she had built a successful tech company from scratch, an empire that now operated quietly under a trust she managed from behind the scenes. She had stepped away from it all after realizing how quickly success could blind people to empathy, how wealth could make others forget the value of simple kindness. Working at the diner was her way of reconnecting with real people, real struggles, and the humility she believed money often erased. But moments like that morning still cut deep, not because she cared about their words, but because they reminded her how cruelly the world judged people by their clothes and their titles. She sat by the window that night, sipping tea and watching the city lights flicker. Somewhere deep inside, she smiled to herself, remembering something her late father used to say: "One day, the people who laugh at you will wish they had treated you better." As she closed her laptop, a notification flashed across the screen, a reminder about the acquisition deal she had been finalizing for weeks. Her legal team had just completed the paperwork. Tomorrow morning, the purchase would be made public. The company being bought, the very same luxury car dealership whose manager had mocked her just hours earlier. Emily leaned back in her chair, a calm satisfaction spreading through her chest. She wasn't seeking revenge. She simply believed in poetic justice. Sometimes life had a way of teaching lessons without a single word being raised, and tomorrow, that lesson would be delivered in silence but remembered forever. The next morning arrived with a stillness that almost felt deliberate, as if the world itself was holding its breath. The sun glowed faintly over the horizon, painting the sky in soft golds and pinks, while the town below began its usual rhythm, engines humming, doors unlocking, and people starting their day with coffee and conversation. At the luxury car dealership, however, things were far from ordinary. Employees were bustling about with nervous energy, polishing already spotless cars, straightening ties, and double-checking paperwork. Rumors had been spreading for days that a powerful billionaire investor was coming to finalize a massive acquisition. The name wasn't public yet, but the dealership's regional director had promised that the visit would be a turning point for everyone. No one could have imagined who that investor truly was. Emily's black SUV pulled up right on schedule. When the tinted door opened and she stepped out, time seemed to freeze. Gone was the humble waitress in a faded apron. Standing before them was a woman transformed. She wore a perfectly tailored white suit, her hair swept into a sleek bun, and a calm confidence that made everyone stop and stare. Even her stride was different, measured, elegant, and assured, as if every step reminded the world of exactly who she was. The dealership manager, the same man who had laughed at her the day before, blinked several times, certain he must be mistaken. "Is that—" "No, it can't be," he whispered to one of his employees, but his voice trembled with uncertainty. Emily's heels clicked softly against the polished floor as she entered the building, her assistant carrying a slim briefcase behind her. The receptionist stammered out a greeting, clearly overwhelmed by the aura of power that surrounded her. "Good morning," Emily said smoothly, her tone warm but commanding. "I have an appointment with your director." She didn't need to introduce herself. Her arrival had already sent the entire office into a quiet frenzy. People whispered, glancing from her to the nervous dealership manager who was now trying and failing to compose himself. Within minutes, the director appeared, all smiles and handshakes, eager to welcome the new owner. He had been briefed about the sale, but not about the buyer's identity. "Miss Emily Harrison," he said, almost breathless with respect, "it's an honor. I've followed your company's growth for years. What you've built is remarkable." His words made the entire staff gasp in disbelief. The waitress from the diner, the woman who had carried plates and endured mockery, was none other than Emily Harrison, founder and CEO of a global tech empire valued in the billions. The dealership manager's face turned ashen. The laughter that had once filled the diner now echoed only in his memory, twisted into a bitter silence. Emily didn't rub it in. That wasn't her style. Instead, she walked through the dealership with quiet grace, inspecting the cars and listening as the director explained the company's financial structure. When they reached the office, her legal team was already waiting. Papers were neatly laid out on the polished mahogany desk. She took a pen, signed her name with a steady hand, and officially became the owner of the entire dealership chain. Cameras flashed as executives clapped politely, unaware of the personal story behind that moment. For Emily, it wasn't about pride or power. It was about closure. When the formalities ended, Emily turned to the manager who had humiliated her. He stood stiffly, his hands trembling, his once arrogant grin replaced with regret and shame. She met his eyes for a long moment before saying in a calm, steady voice, "Good morning. I believe we've met before." The words were simple, but they carried the weight of truth he couldn't escape. He stuttered an apology, his voice breaking, but Emily raised her hand gently to stop him. "There's no need," she said softly. "I just hope next time you'll remember that respect doesn't come from a suit or a title. It comes from how you treat people when you think they have nothing to offer." The room was silent. No one dared to move. Her words settled in the air like a soft thunderclap, quiet yet powerful enough to shake everyone present. After a pause, Emily gave a faint smile, turned to her assistant, and said, "Let's begin restructuring." And just like that, she walked out, her confidence radiating like sunlight. The staff watched her leave, still trying to process what they had witnessed. The same woman they had once dismissed as insignificant had just become their boss, and taught them a lesson they would never forget. Outside, Emily paused for a moment beside her SUV. "Look,"